Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Red Devils for the latest Manchester United news and updates on a Wednesday morning. Days out from Ruben Amorim's first game in charge of United, the end of the international break in the next couple of days, and we will see a full squad back at Carrington where they'll be able to work with our Portuguese manager for the first time. Coming up in the show, we're going to be talking about the one thing that Ruben Amorim wants to change, where he's going to be different to Sir Alex Ferguson. We're going to be talking about why Man City didn't want Ruben Amorim, and also going to be talking a little bit about some of the transfers that we made and where they've been good business or bad business, and the change we're potentially seeing about Manchester United. So yeah, please do smash like on the video if you are new. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Yesterday we spoke about the potential formations we might see from Ruben Amorim and the way that he might set up. But the big thing in terms of the changes for United is going to be about his approach and what's going to make him different from the rest. And there's a lot to talk about with regards to why he might be successful where other managers have not been. And interestingly enough, Ruben Amorim, apparently his first call he made when he was offered the job was to Jose Mourinho to ask about it, and the former Manchester United manager saying basically go for it. So what's quite interesting about that is apparently the feedback coming out of the club is that the players are very impressed with his energy, his decisiveness, the culture, and apparently there are actually quite a lot of comparisons to Mourinho. Now, Ruben Amorim actually did a short stint at Manchester United where he sort of saw how Jose Mourinho was doing. For example, I think he did a week sort of internship when you're doing your coaching badges and the likes. And the feedback apparently from the players was all very, very positive and likening him to Jose Mourinho in terms of the way he understands exactly what he wants to do, and that they can there's a sense of trust the players can go to him and speak to about their issues, for example. But the main thing about it is sort of self-belief in a style that it is going to work and that they are going to be successful underneath him. And that, I think, is something that is very, very important because, you've got to believe in what you're doing and you can't have any sort of doubt. So you can't be a Ruben Amorim situation where you're walking into the club and you're sitting there going, I traditionally play a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2-1, for example. And sort of sit there and saying, well, but now I'm at Manchester United, so do I now need to tweak the formation? Do I need to look at how we can try and make this work, for example? Manchester United have always played in the traditional way. Is that something I have to now consider? Do I need to change my tactics? Do I need to look at different ways of doing things because I'm at Manchester United? And the answer is no, you don't. At the end of the day, the club has hired you to do a job. The job is to win trophies and to take Manchester United right to the top and to win Premier Leagues, challenge for the Champions League and the likes of that. So you need to do that in the way you know how to do that. And, that's what Jose Mourinho did quite unashamedly. And, the fans didn't always buy into it when we were quite negative, for example. But at the end of the day, it's a results-based business. And, none of the Chelsea fans are, complaining about how they won the Champions League under Jose Mourinho and the Premier Leagues they won under Jose Mourinho. It's not... Everybody talks about, oh, you got to do it the proper way. At the end of the day, it's about getting the results and it's about getting the trophies. So if Ruben Amorim thinks that his formation at 3 at the back, for example, is the right way to do it, then that's what he's got to go do. He's got to back himself. He's got to back his system, and he's got to back the fact that he would have had those conversations in the initial meetings to say, listen, this is how I operate. And they must have said, right, that's fine. At the end of the day, he needs to get the backing. He's brought in coaches that understand his system, and Manchester United need to give him the license to basically do what he wants and to implement the system he wants and to play that he wants the way he wants and the likes of that. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how he obviously does commit to a style and the likes, but there's so much more he needs to change than just the formation, than just the transfer system, for example, the players formed, and there's a lot, for example, he has to do so much off the field as well as on the field. So one of the things that Ruben Amorim, or apparently the main thing that Ruben Amorim has identified in terms of changing this Manchester United squad is their identity. And I think that's a very, very important point. Manchester United have been lacking an identity since basically Sir Alex Ferguson left. I think the closest we came to having an identity was probably under Jose Mourinho, to a certain degree in terms of we knew what we were about, we knew kind of what the standards were and what we needed to do. We had a lot of success underneath him, not quite Premier League success in terms of winning the Premier League, but we won the Europa. But at the moment, there seems to be a loss of identity. And what doesn't help, to be honest, is all the previous players saying, oh, but back in Ferguson, we were like this, we were like this. Apparently, Ruben Amorim's very adamant that we can't keep comparing things to Ferguson. It's got to be a new identity with a new squad, new manager to take us into a new era of Manchester United success, which I think is very, very important. Because we harbor on and what we can't do is let go of the success and the standards in terms of what is considered success at Manchester United. So we need to know that Manchester United is considered successful because, or that into Manchester United is winning Premier Leagues, winning Champions Leagues, being one of the best clubs in the world. That is the stand from a results point of view. How that team does it, for example, the identity of the club itself is always going to sort of change. It's a very different identity, for example, Manchester City have under Mourinho than they did under, Mancini and the likes, where they were still winning things, but not obviously as dominant as Pep Guardiola. But the identity of a team and a club will shift over time, in terms of, for example, Real Madrid, and they created that whole Galacticos identity where they went and signed the best players in the world. There's other teams, for example, whose identity, United's identity was all about youth promotion and the academy and the likes of that class of 92. That kind of led that identity. And we continue to be a leading club in terms of promoting the youth and having that really strong youth system. But that can't be the be-all and end-all of Manchester United, because we then try to shift our identity in terms of becoming a bit more like the sort of Real Madrid Galacticos, going and get great players. So Ruben Amorim has identified the lack of identity as a major issue with Manchester United, which I think he's spot on. I do think these players necessarily don't resonate with what the club's all about and what the club should be all about. I think it's something that needs to change a lot. And it's not an overnight process. I think this is the main thing. Changing formation, you rock up a practice, you say, right, this is how we're setting up. Getting it right takes time, for example. But the actual change of formation, you do it like this. You go say, right, there it is. That's our formation. This is how we play. Whereas an identity is something you've got to work out. You've got to craft. And what's quite interesting is the fact that Ruben Amorim is a much younger manager than what we've seen before. He is not in his 50s, for example. He's also not been involved in Manchester United previously, like a Ruud van Nistelrooy has, like an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has. And I think at the moment he resonates a lot more with the current generation than, maybe Erik ten Hag has, who's sort of 12, 13, 14 years older. So it's going to be interesting, because he's bringing no sort of baggage with him, no former United credentials. And he's not sort of been this manager at the top for 10, 15, 20 years who's won everything out there. He's very much a next generation manager. He turns 40 in January. So, you look at players like Johnny Evans, who's, I think, 36. There's 4 years between them. They're very similar ages. They would have played, might even played against each other. Probably not, given when, or maybe actually, to be fair, when he did come and play against Manchester United, Johnny Evans might have been around at the time. So that in itself is going to be quite interesting in terms of establishing the identity, being able to resonate a bit more with the players, understanding a new generation of players. Because at the end of the day, the way Johnny Evans' generation of players is still obviously very different to the way that, Marcus Rashford's now doing things, and to Koeman and Garnacho. But it's also very different to the likes of the Roy Keanes, the Gary Nevilles, when they were there. So football evolves over the years, and the way you act as a professional, the sports science, all that also involves. And you've got to understand that as a manager. You've got to understand how the new generation works. You can't just take, your attitude and treat them the exact same as previous generations, because there are going to be differences. Society is different, for example. The world's different. Things have changed. Things like COVID, for example. So you've got to be very in tune with that and got to understand that does weigh in on players and that does factor in. So if you are aware of that, for example, then you can negotiate and you can use it to your advantage, rather than just trying to continuously sort of fight against the next generation, the new generation of people, players, and the likes, where you're never going to get particularly far with. So I like the fact that I think he's quite cognizant of this and he's aware of that, and he knows he needs to try and get that right. What's quite interesting is the reports that Pep Guardiola is set to re-sign for another year, which amid the whole sort of Chargers story is very interesting. I think obviously they've given a lot of assurances that the Chargers will be unsuccessful and that they're going to win their case. But a story has come out about why Manchester City did not go with Ruben Amorim. So yesterday, the news came out that Pep Guardiola is set to sign a new contract. This was according to Athletic Sam Lee, as apparently agreed a 1-year extension with the option of adding an additional year. And they expect to see a formal announcement. Now, as mentioned, one imagines this means that they're quite confident that the charges that leveled against Man City will be unsuccessful. But that obviously also provides a bit of a framework in terms of why they didn't look at new managers. And apparently, Ruben Amorim, whilst Pep Guardiola's future was a little bit more uncertain, was a main contender for the City job. And one of the reasons or the main reason they didn't go with him, according to this report, is a difference in stylistic fit. That is called, not a stylistic fit. So the way he plays does not suit Manchester City. As a United fan, I couldn't care less. The fact that he was on their radar means he is of that quality. How he plays, up to him. Let's go and get results. And that's going to be interesting in terms of when Pep Guardiola leaves, we're going to see a massive turnaround. We would have seen a massive turnaround in coaches at the top clubs. You know, Arteta's third or fourth season, I think, now at Arsenal, for example. But majority of the managers in your Liverpool's, Chelsea's, United, Spurs, they're all within the last season or two. So we've had a massive overhaul of coaches at teams at the highest level, or your sort of traditional top six teams. And Pep Guardiola, now that Jurgen Klopp's moved on, is kind of like the last man standing. So when he also moves, it'll be a whole new generation of Premier League and a bit of a new dawn for the Premier League in terms of not having your traditional older managers, even the likes of, no Sam Allardyce around these days. Even with the other clubs, lots of very different types of managers. We're seeing lots of foreign managers coming in, younger managers as well coming in, and having a lot of success. You look at what Emery's done on his return to England, and I'm very excited to see what this is actually going to do for football in the next sort of decade, because there are going to be quite a lot of changes in and amid the next few years. The one thing interesting is that the current sort of recruitment department under a lot of fire, obviously, given the different signings we've made over the past few years, and things are not quite worked out. And since Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos have taken over, United has spent £180 million on 5 new arrivals. So they still spend a lot of money. Big money on Lenny Euro, Matthias de Ligt, Ugarte, Xerxes, and Mazraoui. Apparently all very much sort of based on what Erik ten Hag wanted, really, in terms of the type of players. Now, I don't think any of those players are bad players. I don't think any of those players are necessarily bad signings. Maybe Xerxes to a degree. But the main thing is that according to the United Chiefs, the only time they were sort of overspend inverted commas is when they paid the full amount for Lenny Euro, where everybody else they said they reckon they probably got most of those players for under what they projected was the market-related sort of price, which is a nice step in the right direction, if it's true. But I don't think they were big. They were big. It was decent, man. Like they were big figures. But I don't think there were any one of them, apart from Lenny, which they mentioned, they basically paid out his release clause. I don't think any of them were like stupid money where you're like that's just really bad money in terms of there's no ways that can be worth that, for example. So the most expensive was Euro, who came in at 62 million euros. But then you've got Ugarte, who's at 50 million euros. You've got De Ligt at 45 million euros. Now De Ligt has been obviously was out ice, and that's why a lot of he's considered a Erik ten Hag player for his or signing, but he's also a player who has been around the block. And I mean, when you're signing a player from Bayern Munich, for example, you're not signing a terrible player. And you look at the money for him. I think that'll be money really well spent. At the end of the day, when he went to Bayern Munich, he went for 67 million euros, and that was after an 85 million euro transfer fee to Ajax. So the fact that we got him for 45 million euros means we've actually got him for less than anybody else before us. And I don't think a lot of people will sit there saying, no, that's because he's dropped off in standards. I don't think. I still think he's got the ability to be one of the best defenders in the world. He's 25 years old. He is a very, very young, and he's still got so much more to give, and he's a potential captain in the making. So I don't think that he was overpriced at all. You look at Mazraoui, and I mean, he looks like an absolute steal for 15 million euros. Xerxes at 42 million euros haven't seen the rewards just yet. But again, you look at the ages of these players. Mazraoui was the oldest, 26 years old. Xerxes was 23. Ugarte's 23. Delict's 25. And then he was 18. So 62 million on an 18-year-old is mad money. But you've got to look at that. If he goes to play 7 years, for United, becomes one of the best centre backs in the world, you go back and say, right, well, there we go. And I think they do view him as someone who's ready to start playing now. He's not a player for 2-3 years' time. He is a player for them now, which is why they were willing to kind of go and spend that kind of money on a teenager. So very, very interesting times. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Let me know what you think of, the Identia concept and what do you think Amorim has to get right and how we can potentially get that right. Let me know down in the comments below. Please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe.